All right, good evening, everyone. We'll call this meeting of the North College Hill City Council to order.
What time do you have, Mike?
I have 7:02.
Thank you.
All right, we'll do our prayer and we'll do our Pledge of Allegiance. God our Father, we are all your servants. We trust in your mercy and love. We trust also in your guidance. Direct the meetings of this Council of North College Hill to make good decisions for all the people who live in our city. Give all the members of this council wisdom and insight to know what is best for our city. Help us to be fair and just in all our decisions. Bless us all to do the very best we can. With your help and guidance, we pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Now we'll do a Pledge of Allegiance. Can you see the flag?
Yep.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
All right, Ms. Dewald, please call the roll.
Miss Bailey? Mr. Hedger?
Here.
Mr. Underwood?
Here.
Mr.
Here.
Novak?
Here, sorry, I was muted.
Ms. Zorb?
Here.
Ms. Hartman?
Here.
Mr. O'Shea?
Here.
Thank you. All right, you have before you tonight's agenda.
All right, has anybody heard from Miss Bailey?
I can hear through them.
I've not.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the agenda.
I have a motion to accept the agenda from Ms. Zorb.
Mr. President,
Ms. Hartman?
I'll second that.
I'm sorry. There are two lines on there about remarks from the audience. Can we make that fix?
I'm sorry, that's my mistake. I forgot to take them out.
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb?
I would like to change my motion.
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to make a motion to remove remarks from the audience.
And further remarks from the audience?
Oh, I didn't even see that one. Yes, and that one also.
Okay, thank you. All right, we have a motion to amend the agenda by striking remarks from the audience and further remarks from the audience by Ms. Zorb.
Mr. President,
Ms. Hartman?
I will second that.
All right, I have a motion for Ms. Zorb, second for Ms. Hartman to adopt the amended agenda. Discussion? Please call the roll.
And we're positive that Miss Bailey is absent.
Yes.
Mr. Hedger?
Yes.
Ms. Underwood?
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak?
Yes.
Ms. Zorb?
Yes.
Ms. Hartman?
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea?
Yes.
Amended agenda is approved 6-0. 6
Okay,
to
thank you.
1. 6 to 1.
I'm sorry, Mr. President, did I miss, did you vote to excuse Ms. Bailey?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
All right, you have the minutes from the council meeting on 4/6/2020.
Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Yeah, I kind of fell asleep at the wheel, I guess, there. I mean, if it's not too late, I would move that we excuse Miss Bailey.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I'll second that. I was actually trying to reach her, but I'll second that motion.
All right, motion for Mr. Miller Novak, second by Ms. Underwood. Discussion,
Mr. President,
Ms. Zorb.
I'd like to ask the question again. Has anyone heard from Miss Bailey? I believe Mr. Graver, you're the one who's supposed to, and you have not, I'm assuming.
I have not.
Thank you.
I will check email real quick one more time, but I have not heard from her.
I have not. Mr. President.
Yes.
I have not, but I mean, given that we're completely reliant on technology, I'm just willing to take the shot. Stick with my motion.
Okay, thank you. Motion on the floor to excuse Ms. Bailey from Mr. Miller Novak with a second by Ms. Underwood. Please call the roll.
Mr. Hedger,
Yes.
Ms. Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Yes.
Did we lose Ms. Dewald?
I believe her frame is
Yeah,
frozen.
she's frozen. Okay,
I'm calling Mr. Miller Novak. I know he's, did he leave already? Miller Novak's not responding.
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Dorr,
Yes.
Ms. Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea.
No.
Motion passes with a 5-1 vote.
okay, thank you. Please direct your attention now to the minutes from the meeting on April 6, 2020. I went ahead and muted everyone. I don't know who's got the background noise. So you're all on mute.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea,
I move that we adopt the minutes as submitted.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion from Mr. O'Shea with a second from Ms. Underwood to adopt the minutes as submitted. Discussion? Ms. Dewald, please call the roll.
Mr. Hedger,
Yes.
Ms. Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Yes.
Ms. Zorb, Ms. Zorb,
Yeah. I can't figure out where the mute button is.
Ms. Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea.
Yes.
All right, Ms. Dewald, any communications?
Last I checked my mailbox was Saturday, there was nothing in there. The only thing I have in the line of communication would be the mayor's monthly court report for the month of March.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, we'll move on to committee reports, budget and finance.
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
Ms. Bailey is the chair of that committee, and she's not present today. As far as I know, she didn't email me a copy of any report that she had. I would defer to Vice Chair, I think, Mr. Hedger.
Yeah, I can, let me find the minutes, 1 second. I apologize in the future if you hear loud car sounds. My windows are open, so. So we went over, it looks like the created resolution for Dallas Avenue to move it to the city manager, or excuse me, city administrator to look into a selling price and reach out for a realtor for that. We went ahead and moved the OWPC legislation to, I believe, tonight. And then the ODOT legislation is also moved out of the committee to council. The fire equipment fund, we are still reviewing. And then we also looked at a bag tax, and that's also still being reviewed through within committee. And then we looked at the Hamilton County Planning Grant. We're still waiting on correspondence from the law director on the salary ordinance. And then we are also looking at an increase to the rental registration fee and creating half of that going towards a down payment assistance program for home buyers in North College Hill. And I think that's everything.
Thank you, Mr. Hedger.
Yeah.
Next, city and community development and recreation.
All right, it's also me. We're postponing the public hearing for the conditional use permits and sign legislation. We discussed about North College Hill entrance signage and just kind of directing the city administrator to take a look at and get an idea for pricing. And then we also looked at North College Hill branding. We talked a little bit about dog park. Then we also went into the Tree City USA and creating a tree board. Let's see, we talked about a beauty salon district. And then we also discussed about a comprehensive plan as well. Talks about that. Other than that, that was it.
Ms. DeWald, were you trying to get my attention?
I was, thank
I
you.
apologize.
But if Mr. Hedger could go back to the very first item that they spoke of, postpone something,
Sure. Would you like me to send you my minutes?
that would be beautiful.
All right, I'll do that.
Thank you.
That's all covered in there.
Great, thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea.
a question for Mr. Hedger concerning the rental registration revisions or something. Is that not the same as ordinance 3 that's on the agenda for tonight?
No, that is the same. I believe it is on there. That's, did I say moved out of council, moved out of committee? I can't remember.
It just wasn't clear that that was the same thing that was this piece of legislation. That's all.
Yes, that's the same piece. So the second piece of it was not completed yet.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hedger. Public safety.
The next meeting of the Public Safety Committee is 1 week from today at 7:30.
Mr. President. Mr. President. Oh,
I'm muted. Yes.
sorry.
Yes, Mr. Mosby.
Our finance manager is trying to participate, and I was trying to see if Josh would allow her to come in. She's in the queue.
You got that, Josh?
Yeah, I don't see anybody in the queue.
Okay. I just received a text from her. I'm sorry, I don't want to hold anything up, but I just wanted to make sure, so I apologize.
I've unlocked the meeting, but I don't see anybody in the queue.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Rules and Public Policy.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Rules and Public Policy Committee has not met since the last council meeting. We're scheduled to meet virtually for our regularly scheduled meeting on the fourth Monday of every month at 6:30. That would be April the 27th. We plan to discuss the proposed updated, complete hard copy of the charter. And I'm hoping to discuss potential or what our next steps are for any changes to the codified ordinance 113.01, which is the ordinance about posting places where notification is supposed to be posted. That's about all I have.
Thank you, Mr. O'Shea. Ad hoc reports.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea.
as a liaison for the North College Hill Chamber of Commerce, the executive board met on last Thursday, April 16th, via video conference. We continued our discussion about possible changes to the dues structure, whether we go quarterly, whether we just extend this year's dues throughout next year. We also continued our discussion about the supported benefits from the Southern Ohio Chamber Association. We also talked again about potentially needing to find a new location for the yard sale. I think that's about it. And then we're, as I mentioned last meeting, our general membership meeting is tentatively scheduled for May 14th. We are considering doing some sort of virtual meeting with no specific agenda other than just trying to stay connected with the membership. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Any other reports?
Mr. President,
Ms. Underwood.
I spoke with a liaison from the senior center. And she tells me that they need volunteers to help with Meals on Wheels deliveries. She says that it's daily, I believe, from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. There are a lot of seniors who are kind of, freaking out a little bit about possibly not having what they need. And I reached out to her after the mayor reached out to me. And what she tells me is that they need volunteers. So if there's anything that anybody can do or anybody wants to volunteer, that is what they need right now.
Mr. President,
Ms. Nichols.
you said, Ms. Underwood, you said 9 to 1. Is that Monday through Friday?
I believe it's Monday through Friday. I believe so.
Okay, thank you.
You wouldn't have to, obviously you wouldn't have to work every day. If you wanted to volunteer, it could be one day or however many days you can volunteer. She just says that, she needs more people because they have more requests for the Meals on Wheels because of COVID-19 stay-at-home orders.
So who should a volunteer ask for?
I can, Brandy, and I can give you her contact information.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Underwood. Any other reports? All right, we'll move on to administrative reports. Madam Mayor.
I really don't have much this evening. I'm glad Ms. Underwood shared that little piece of information because now I'm to the point where Le Soup is contacting me. So they contacted me again to see if there was another need. And I do notice that there is more. I see the school van in the parking lot a little bit more up here at the city center, more so. I think they may be coming more than 2 or 3 times a week. They may come every day. I saw them here Friday. I saw them here today. So, and I did see people at the van both times. I wanted to give a shout out to the police department for on Resurrection Sunday, Easter. They rode around and, you know, it was really exciting to see some of the kids even on my street as the Easter bunny came past on the back of the police car. So that was exciting, and shout out to them for that. And the only other thing that I know of, we're trying to, I know all these parents want their kids to go back to school, but unfortunately that won't happen. Governor DeWine shut us down a little more, Mr. Miller Novak, so they'll be at home at least to the remainder of the year. I know both of my older girls work at elementary schools, and the middle one is like really sad. So she's missing her students, she said. So I can, I know the parents want them home, and I know the teachers want them back. So, and that's all I really, that's all I have. We're working on other things here in the office with Ms. Hall. I know we're looking at a way, and she's been really diligent about, we know that there's an extra pay period, but she came up with a way after, you know, we discussed some things to where we could possibly not avoid, but it'll work out in our benefit. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor Nichols. Move on to the city administrator's report. Mr. Mosby.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Basically, I really don't have a lot for tonight. What I will say is, and just echo what the mayor said, we are really trying to remain diligent as far as keeping our eye on our expenses right now. I will say that we have received some guidance that might give us an idea of what we may see in the future as far as perhaps decreased revenues. The state has kind of given us an idea that our second receipt for real estate taxes may be approximately 10% less than what we had last year. So we may see a change there. One of the things that I would like to point out to council is that we are a smaller city, and so some of our, we may not necessarily see the effect or the impact immediately. That we may not see it for, you know, another 2 to 4 weeks. But as of right now, we have actually seen or enjoyed a slight increase over what our projections have been so far. So between that, which is an increase in projected revenues, and us trying to keep our expenses at a minimum, I think right now we are sitting well. I would like to express condolences to the Caldwell family. Those of you who know Mr. Kenny Caldwell and his brother, who both work for the fire department. Their father passed away this past weekend. And so I have talked to Chief Fells about that, but I do want to express our condolences to their family. Um, so far, I think as far as police have been concerned, we haven't seen any major, we haven't had any major issues other than what we have noticed, as I believe Mr. Chief Schran had said earlier, we have noticed an increase in calls for domestic disturbances. And I suspect that that probably will continue until until our economy is, getting back on track. Um, Everybody, of course, knows that we've been promoting and we were working with the North College Hill Chamber to help promote some of the businesses that are open, of course, right now. I think at this point, with the governor anticipating opening up the economy, I'm very hopeful that we will be able to see a robust increase in traffic for many of our businesses. I will say that there is a business that I think all of you were familiar with, which was the Save-A-Lot, which closed. And there is a new business that is scheduled to come in. I haven't talked to them recently. Originally they were scheduled to come in on the 10th of May. However, I don't know if that has changed as a result of the pandemic, as a result of COVID-19. Also, some of you may have noticed that there is a fence around the North College Hill Carwash. So the good news there is that the company, DeVita, is coming in and they are beginning work. There will be, they've already taken out some of the vacuums for that used to be there for the car wash. And so fairly soon, I don't have an exact date at this particular time, but they will be beginning demolition of that building to erect the new dialysis center, which will be there. So from a business perspective, that is good for us. So that is about it right now, Mr. President.
Mr. President,
Ms. Nichols?
I wanted to just comment on something that Mr. Mosby said. I know with the dialysis place, I don't know if anyone wanted to attend. They were going to have a groundbreaking, but obviously now I know they're working on something that's virtual. I don't know how you do a virtual groundbreaking, but they're working on it. So when they give me the details, I will surely pass it on. I'm interested to see how that works, but.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Mosby. All right, next line item is a report from the law director, and he is not present. I'm sorry, Ms. Zorb. You're not muted and no sound is coming out. Now you're muted.
Now, yeah.
Now, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
This mute thing is really killing me. So I have a question for Mr. Mosby. I've had a couple residents contact me about gatherings, and I instructed them to call the non-emergency number, but apparently they were told don't call the non-emergency number. Can you let us all know what the process is for reporting that?
For reporting what specifically?
For breaking the governor's mandate to stay at home and to self-quarantine, isolate, whatever word you want to put around it.
Well,
To prevent gatherings.
Well, I guess we have to be careful how we're saying that. There isn't even though, obviously he was not promoting this, but obviously people may have gatherings on their private property. That's a little bit different. They're not supposed to be gathering in public spaces right now, particularly of groups of 10 or more. There was an event that occurred, I believe, over this past weekend, but I did ask the police chief to investigate. The police did go and investigate what the matter was. And so if there is something that comes up, then yes, I have, I talked to the police chief to investigate, those matters if there are specific matters. But I don't know, I'm not aware of any particular instruction not to call I'm assuming that when you say the non-emergency number, you're referring to the 521-7171. yeah, I mean, that would be the only thing that I would say. And then if they do get the voicemail, they would need to leave a message.
Okay, I will pass that on. Thank you.
All right, next is call of members. We'll start with Mr. Hedger. Appears Mr. Hedger is not with us.
I noticed one other time he had dropped off. He must be having difficulties.
Josh, is Mr. Hedger trying to get back in?
No, I've left the meeting unlocked, but yeah, I've allowed participants to come back in, but I just see nobody in the queue.
Okay. All right, we'll go to Ms. Underwood then.
Thank you, Mr. President. I heard on the news that the school year is possibly canceled for the rest of the year. And I know that there's no public library in North College Hill. And I know the Princeton School District has made arrangements to have like Wi-Fi hotspots around where the kids can go and access the internet to help them get their homework done and that kind of thing. And I don't know how they did that. I don't know if it was the school board or, what was going on, but I would like to, I'm just wondering if there's something that we can possibly do to coordinate with the school board to try to make that happen, because I know that the children in our district may, have some trouble getting internet access. And my understanding from just some of the literature that I was reading was that they had businesses that allowed people to come into the parking lot and access the internet that way. They also had buses that went to different places and they could access internet that way. So does anybody have any thoughts on that? Or is it just, we should just, I don't care. I mean, I hope that's not our thing, but I just was wondering if there's anything that we can do to try to help with that, considering that, the rest of the school year is going to be remote learning for the kids in North College Hill.
Mr. President, I do know, Ms. Underwood, that the superintendent of North College Hill Schools, they sent out a survey to all the parents asking who had internet, who was able for their kids to access it. And there were two options given. And I don't know if this helps with your question or if you're looking for anything additionally. Either the kids can pick up paper if the parents said that they don't have access to internet services. So they can't do both. So if you pick up paper, you're going to do paper assignments. If you pick up a Chromebook, or if you don't need to pick up a Chromebook and you have a laptop at home, then you're going to be a distant learner that way. So I don't know. I mean, I know the opportunity is still out there for kids to get Chromebooks if they need them, but they have two options: either they're paper or they're online. So I guess if internet is available, then yeah, you will have more kids coming in to get Chromebooks, or if they have it at home. Most likely, if they don't have internet, they don't have a device at home. So it turns into another issue if we have the businesses. I know Chief Strand didn't really want a lot of kids loitering out. So if you go like to McDonald's, and you have a group of kids showing up at McDonald's, Skyline, Italianate, they can't sit in. So, I mean, and most of their parents probably won't drive them there. Princeton is, I mean, Springdale is a bigger district, more quick serve restaurants than we have, or what have you. None of the Starbucks that I know of are open. I don't know if it was all restaurants. I think that there were like some buildings that they had available, and then they also had like buses that were in parking lots, that kind of thing. I just thought that it would
It's just, it's just really difficult to, if you can't afford internet and, if you're a kid that normally will try to get your work done at school, so to make sure that you have, you can have access to the internet. I just didn't know if there was anything that we can do, like just even if we work with the school board to try to, make that happen, not necessarily with McDonald's, because I can understand that, but maybe, some kind of way they can even go to the school parking lot or, something.
Yeah, they probably would have to do a different Wi-Fi, because I can't tell you working there that parking lot, you really don't pick up. So you would need something additional.
And
So,
that's all I had.
You can't hear me. I see what you're saying. I love the mute button. All right, so we're at call of members. Mr. Hedger, you missed your turn, but we'll go back to you if you're prepared.
Thanks. I don't really have anything at this time. Just stay safe.
Thank you. Mr. Miller Novak.
It's good to see everybody is safe and well so far, and has all your digits attached and all that stuff still. And it's good to see you. Oh, there's 10 on mic. So we might want to come up with an international symbol for mute or something like that. It's been a common problem. Like, we all do that when someone's mute and trying to talk or something. But again, I just want to thank all of our first responders and our police and our EMTs and firefighters and all of you. It's been a difficult time for everybody. And I do want to thank our residents who are following the guidelines and respecting our governor's orders and being patient with the scenario and not putting anybody else at risk. And that's all I have. Is just thank you to everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Miller Novak. Ms. Zorb.
I don't really have anything at this time either, other than I will reiterate Mr. Hedger and say, please stay safe.
Ms. Zorb, have you had a chance to drive up Hamilton Avenue?
I did. I
Okay,
did.
good.
Well, I did. I had someone drive me, but yes, I did see I did see the tulips. I was able to get some pictures. Thank you.
All right, good. Ms. Hartman.
I don't have anything at this time.
Thank you. Mr. O'Shea.
I have nothing at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up is legislation. Ms. Dewald.
I'm digging it out. First on our agenda is first reading for ordinance number 3/2020, an ordinance amending chapter 1359 of the codified ordinances of the city of North College Hill. First reading.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea.
a couple of questions or concerns. First, can someone tell me who submitted the ordinance?
Mr. President,
Ms. Dewald.
this came from Amber Bailey, and I believe there were some notes on here saying that it had to go to our lawyer. I talked to her about several changes on this before I sent it out. So she removed her name and his name off the top left-hand corner. So she did, after a phone call or two, she did say then that Dieters has seen this and she made the revisions that I asked.
All right, thank you. Also, I'm pretty sure maybe Mr. Mosby can help me with this, but our code enforcement is not underneath the police department anymore, if I'm not mistaken. So do we officially still have a code enforcement officer? or is that more of a generic term, or how is that handled now?
Mr. President,
Mr. Mosby?
Mr. O'Shea, yes, we do have a code enforcement officer, and you are correct. The violations are not what we would consider to be criminal in nature. Instead they are civil, and so if we have to do something to rectify them, then of course just as we do with, for example, lawn cutting, we then charge whatever costs are incurred to their real estate bill.
Okay, and then one other thing, maybe Ms. Dewald, you can let me know. I noticed, though it was a minor issue, but it says 1359.05 fees. It's a couple of paragraphs down. Looked like we needed a space after the number 30. Has that been changed at this point?
Let me catch up with you. I don't see that. 1359.5.
I think it's 0.05 maybe.
Could you be more specific, like maybe what page it might be on?
Page 2 at the very bottom.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, okay, so now that I've caught up, what was the question?
It's probably just, it's obviously just a typo issue that probably needs to be addressed before we move forward with the legislation. But I didn't know if where it says all payments are due by January 30 of the calendar year, has that been changed, or do you know?
Or are you asking me?
Well, since you said you had already talked to Ms. Bailey about some things that were addressed, I just wasn't sure.
Right. I actually did not discuss with her most of the body of the document. I mostly discussed, like I said, the little typewritten notes saying that it was going to Dieters and she had produced it. No, I guess we can certainly look into this. So all payments are due by January 30th of the calendar year, and you want to know if that has not changed.
Correct. There's a space between 30 and the word of, that's all.
Oh, it needs to be spaced.
If it hasn't already been fixed.
Okay. So I could probably fix that. I'll see if I can't, I'll go back to the powers that be.
I'm just not sure at this point if we really need to make an amendment to the document, that's all.
I vote no. Oh, I don't get to vote, do I? Okay.
That's all I have for now.
So you may be seeing a corrected copy of this. Well, for sure you will, either through me or Miss Bailey.
Okay, Ms. Dewald, please proceed.
And then we have a first reading on Resolution 6/2020, a resolution authorizing participation in the ODOT road salt contracts awarded in 2020 and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President.
Mr. O'Shea.
Again, just to get an update, who submitted this one? Do we know?
Again, this came from Miss Bailey.
Mr. Hedger, maybe you can help me out. Is it our intent, or maybe Mr. Mosby, that this is submitted before April 24th?
Mr. President.
Mr. Mosby.
Mr. O'Shea, we received notification from the Ohio Department of Transportation that as long as we have the resolution basically in process, that we could go ahead and purchase the estimated salt order that we would purchase for this year. So it does not have to be accomplished by the deadline as long as we have it in process.
Thank you. And then one other thing is the particular piece of legislation has a lot of signature lines on the bottom. I don't think that's for council members to sign, right? Or why, do we know why there's so many? Is this going to be the same document that's submitted and signed, or what are we doing?
Mr. President, may I?
Ms. Dewald?
So I did speak to Ms. Bailey about this as well. And this is how it was presented to her, so that's how she kept it. And I said I could find no other legislation that had this many signatures for approval or authorization. So it was submitted to her this way, and so my guess is it's probably a copy and paste from another city, and that's what they needed. My guess.
Mr. President,
Mr. Mosby?
I'm not certain. I thought my guess would probably be that it may have been a template. It's not, it's not, for example, I don't believe a copy of our previous or our prior, resolution, which would have been from 2019. However, I think the point being, and perhaps this might answer Mr. O'Shea's question, even with the significant number of signature lines, as long as we have the critical signatures on there, that should certainly suffice.
All right, thank you.
Is that
Yes.
completed?
Yes. Go ahead, Ms. Dewald.
Resolution, a first reading for Resolution 07-2020. It's a resolution authorizing the City of North College Hill to prepare and submit an application to participate in the Ohio Public Works Commission State Capital Improvement and/or Local Transportation Improvement Program or programs, and to execute contracts as required.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea?
again, just to clarify, who submitted the legislation?
Again, I believe this came from, well, it definitely came from Ms. Bailey. Now, I'm not sure about Mr. Dieters on this one. I really can't answer for him on that, but Ms. Bailey submitted all these pieces of legislation for tonight.
All right, thank
Mr.
you.
President,
Ms. Underwood?
was Mr. Dieter sent an invitation to this meeting?
Standing invitation.
I believe he's always invited.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. O'Shea?
one last thing, Ms. Dewald, I'm not sure if the name on the document was, I don't want to say your responsibility, but ultimately the document gets uploaded to the internet, whatever. The file name to me indicated that it was an ordinance, not a resolution. So I just want to make sure that that gets cleared up so it doesn't cause confusion when it's uploaded.
I received this as a resolution. The only thing that I changed was on ordinance 3, was presented as an ordinance, but in the subtitle it said a resolution amending chapter 1359. So I changed that from, what's the word I'm looking for, resolution to an ordinance. This one, Resolution 7-2020, I really made no changes on whatsoever. This is how it was presented to me.
Okay, but on the document that was attached to the email that you sent is titled 2020-07 ORD. The title of the document.
I'd have to go back and look at that. Do you believe that was my typo?
Okay, I just
I mean, you can
when it-
say that.
when it gets uploaded,
Was that the one I did at 1 o'clock in the morning?
I wasn't there with you, Ms. Dewald, at 1 o'clock in the morning.
Thank God.
Anyway, just so it's put in the correct place when it is uploaded from as an ordinance or a resolution, whichever.
I will check into that. Thank you.
I have nothing further.
Mr. President.
Mr. Mosby.
Yeah, so I did want to just kind of summarize because Mr. DeWalt is absolutely correct that the documents or legislation that were submitted by Ms. Bailey are actually regular or recurring ordinances or resolutions that need to be passed. And so every year, of course, we order salt. Every year we have to pass a formal resolution saying that we will participate in the SCIP funding to make us eligible for our road projects. And so that's the reason for it. Last year, when I first came on, that legislation didn't pass until I believe it was close to October. And so she's putting it in early so that we can make sure that it does get passed. Having said that, I do also, and I know I've mentioned it before, but I do want to mention one other one, and that is the tax budget legislation will be coming up. I know that Ms. Ari Hall has already put in place or gotten the notification in place so we can have a public hearing. She will be getting together with Ms. Bailey in order to plan or schedule the proper date for that public hearing. But once again, that is legislation that would be due to the county in July. And so we are doing everything we can, of course, to make sure that it is on the agenda in enough time so that it can be passed at the meeting in July, and then we can forward it to the county.
Thank you, Mr. Mosby. All right, move on to old business. I do not see or hear any new business or old business, so we'll move on to new business.
Mr. President,
Mr. Miller Novak.
if nobody has any new business, I move that we adjourn.
President,
Mr. O'Shea.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Miller Novak with a second from Mr. O'Shea to adjourn tonight's meeting. Please call the roll.
Mr. Hedger,
Sorry, I can't hear you. Yes.
Miss Underwood,
Yes.
Mr. Miller Novak,
Yes.
Ms. Zor,
Yes.
Ms. Hartman,
Yes.
Mr. O'Shea.
Yes.
All right, that motion passes. We are adjourned.
I have